Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da.
Welcome, 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 geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to another all-new edition of Geek to Me Radio. If you're a fan of nostalgia and you love the show The Toys That Made Us on Netflix, we've got Brian Volk-Weiss, the creator and director of that series. We'll be talking to him for the whole hour all about all things toys. Stand by.
We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all.
And for those of you who are listening to this, you're streaming us online. Thank you very much for finding us there. And if you're hearing us after the fact in the podcast form on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud, Podomatic, Player FM, or wherever you get your podcast from, thanks very much for finding us there and downloading. We appreciate that. We have a great guest. I was entranced by this series, The Toys That Made Us. Loved seeing these toys growing up that I played with and listening to the backstory of how they were made, what went into production of them. And right now we're joined by the person who made all that possible. We're joined now by the producer, a director, the CEO of Nacelle, I'm pronouncing that probably incorrectly, Nacelle Company, Brian Volk-Weiss. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me on. Very psyched to talk to you.
As am I. The first two seasons blew me away as someone who grew up as an 80s kid. Watching the story behind the toys I played with as a child fascinated me. Even the ones I didn't play with. I was never a Hello Kitty guy, nor did I get into Barbies, but those were some of the more fascinating episodes, and I absolutely loved what you guys did. It was brilliant.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The idea for The Toys That Made Us, we'll start there. After digging into your biography and finding out more about you, I realized we could probably talk for like 5 hours and barely scratch the surface on all the stuff you've done. But focusing for a moment on The Toys That Made Us, when you picked the first episodes, you knew you were going to do a season 2. We're now anxiously awaiting the announcement for the premiere date of season 3. What went into the decision process as to how this was going to be done, how it was going to be dissected, and which toy lines you would cover?
I chose the toys based on toys, of course, that I was very interested in personally and that I collect them and or I used to play with them. Or they were toys that I did not play with and don't collect, but I had a lot of questions about them. A lot of people are surprised to hear this, but I did not play with or collect or have any interest in He-Man. But when the show was greenlit, I was very excited to finally dig into it. And now, of course, I'm a huge He-Man collector. So I had the same thing with Power Rangers. I was never a Power Rangers fan. I think I was born 18 to 24 months too late. And I just never got into it. So now I am very into it, and now I'm a fan, to put it mildly.
And with each episode going into such depth as you did on each toy line, how long just typically did a particular episode take to create, as far as going into the depth? You had the guests who were some of the creators of the toys. On average, how long did each episode take from conception to finished production?
Well, we make all the episodes simultaneously, and it takes between getting the green light and delivering to Netflix, it takes about 9 months, maybe 10. In this case, maybe 11 months. I think it took about 9 months for seasons 1 and 2, and then it took about 11 months for season 3. We did announce a spin-off of Toys That Made Us called Movies That Made Us, which we shot simultaneously with Toys That Made Us. And part of the reason Toys That Made Us took a little bit longer, season 3, to deliver, was Movies That Made Us. Because it was a season 1 show, we had some learning curve issues to deal with, and that affected Toys That Made Us season 3. But I think a safe estimate is 9 to 11 months between greenlight and delivery. And, the other thing I would also mention is, it's not like we deliver and then Netflix flips a switch and it premieres. Netflix has many months of work to do after we deliver, because one of the things people know about Netflix, but they don't really think about, is, long story short, first of all, every kind of television and every kind of phone, it needs different programming to have everything premiere simultaneously. Then, every country has different rules and different regulations. So some countries, it's very easy to just deliver, a TV show to. Other countries have censors, and other countries have rules and regulations, and it takes longer. And because Netflix is a big believer in worldwide simultaneous premieres, that's not a fast process. So, if we were making the show for, a network or a cable channel, we've literally delivered shows on Wednesdays that have aired on Fridays. But that's easy to do when you're basically only doing televisions in the United States. Netflix is not like that, so it takes a lot longer.
Yeah, the international distribution, I'm sure, has a lot of loopholes with which there are to jump through.
Yes, exactly.
And talking a little bit about the ones, I guess can you talk about any of the ones, like give us an idea of what you've got coming up for season 3 without giving away anything?
Well, we announced the episodes at Comic-Con, so it's Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, wrestling, and My Little Pony. Those are the 4 episodes of season 3.
And is there already plans for season 4, like you already have some stuff going down the line, 4, 5, 6, or are you going to get through this? You've got obviously many projects you're working on. How far in advance do you start planning? Is it like Nightmare Before Christmas where season 4 is about to drop, you're going to start planning season 5?
We definitely know exactly what we want to do for seasons 4, 5, and 6. So it's just, understandably, Netflix has to see how season 3 did before greenlighting additional seasons. So, we're feeling good, and there's so much pent up enthusiasm, for lack of a better word, that I think we'll be okay. But you never know. I've been doing this a long time. You never ever know if you're going to get a pickup or not. I've had shows I was positive were going to get canceled and got picked up. And I've had shows I was positive were going to get picked up and did not. So, you just do the best job you can and pray to God you're going to have a little luck.
And I was saying the depth you've gone into on some of these toys, it's just astounding. You get people who worked on the toy lines. Was there any of these toy lines that you were very surprised by some of the things you found out? Were there any key revelations like, wow, I had no idea that made you more excited about that particular toy line or brand?
Well, the number one surprise, which if I had to guess will never be defeated, is, when we were interviewing Jim Kipling for the Star Wars episode, to find out that, I had grown up my whole life. I'm 43, and I think just about anybody my age, we always grew up thinking George Lucas made the majority of his money from the toys. So when we found out that that was not the case, and that he had only made about 2.5 cents of every dollar, that was shocking. And literally when Jim Kipling told us that, I was like, oh no, you got it wrong. You mean it the other way. He made all his money from the toys and not the movies. And he's like, no, he made almost no money, percentage-wise from the toys. And to be honest with you, had he not brought the contract with him, which is truly one of the greatest shocks of my entire career, A, that he showed up at all, B, that he brought the contract with him, I don't even think we would have used the footage because I wouldn't have believed him. Such was it ingrained with me that George didn't make a lot of money from the movies versus the toys. So that's the biggest surprise. The second biggest surprise, of course, was learning that it was actually Marvel comic books that told Hasbro, hey, not only can we not write a comic book without a bad guy, we strongly recommend that G.I. Joe have a bad guy. So, of course, I had grown up thinking that G.I. Joe and Cobra or, peas and carrots or eggs and bacon or whatever. So, to hear the story that it was actually Hasbro being like, that Hasbro said to Marvel, okay, we agree with you. There needs to be a bad guy. You figure it out. And it was just completely random that, some guy at Marvel was like, yeah, hello, Cobra. Like that to me, I mean, I love that. I absolutely love that.
And I'm sure many people were surprised. That's one of the reasons I think your series was so successful is people grew up playing with these toys, but they had no idea about all the backstory. I think the documentary has become such it's a growing field where more and more people are watching them. I think this is the perfect time for you to be doing the toys that made us because you've got that nostalgia aspect mixed with everyone loving the documentary series. So it's a win-win.
I am biased, but of course I agree. But I am biased.
And shifting gears to another thing, talking about nostalgia, I'm very, very excited for the Mad About You that's coming back from Comedy Dynamics. Talk a little bit about how you got involved with that. Were you a fan of the show starting out, and where we can kind of see things pick up once the show starts? And we're going to get Brian's answer to that question right after this, so stand by.
It's the toys that made us. The toys that made us is here.
Hi, this is James Enstall, host of Geek to Me Radio, and in honor of my favorite Themyscirian, I've decided to become an Amazon warrior.
Hera, give me strength.
The next time you want to buy something from Amazon, go to geektomeradio.com first and click on our Amazon affiliate link. Simply shop like you normally would, and when you check out, a small percentage will go towards supporting the show. So remember, the next time you want to search Amazon for the latest Wonder Woman graphic novel or parts for your invisible jet, click through from geektomeradio.com first.
The world was in peril. Would you have me stand by and do nothing?
Hey, you guys, this is Raphael of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And after we've kicked Shredder's butt, we all get down the sewer and we listen to Geek to Me Radio. Turtle Power!
We are back talking with Brian Volk-Weiss. We asked him about the new project he has coming up, the Mad About You comeback that they're bringing with Paul Reiser and Helen Hunt coming back to the airwaves. And we'd asked him about his work and involvement on that project.
Yes, I was always a fan of the show, to put it mildly. And I have worked with Paul Reiser for a long time. At least 7 years, maybe more. So that's how the whole thing got started. More than that, I cannot say anything about the show. There are a lot of, understandably, rules in place about who can say what. Right. And I am not one of those people at this time. So that's definitely stuff that Sony or Charter or Paul or Helen, they need to talk more about that. I don't want to get in any trouble.
Understood. No problems. We've got a lot of other stuff to talk about. Your comedy specials you've been producing for many years now. You've worked with some of the best names in the business. You've established a lot of people, kind of almost given them their break in some cases, and then you work with some people who are well-known household names. It's got to be such a fascinating working with these different people at different stages of their careers to bring about these stand-up comedy specials, which are, as I mentioned with the documentary series, almost a mainstay now. Everyone wants a special on Netflix, a special on Showtime. If you could talk a little bit about how you got involved in doing particularly some of these different people's stand-up comedy specials, and you mentioned an article in Forbes where you talk about the future of stand-up. If you could talk a little bit about where you see this going.
I got into it, very organically. I used to be a manager, And all I represented was stand-up comedians for the most part. And, when you're a manager of stand-up comedians, about once a year, you produce a stand-up special. So one day I got a phone call from a guy who represented Michael Ian Black, and he was like, listen, man, I know you don't represent Michael Ian Black, but yeah, why don't you do a stand-up special? And at first, I was kind of annoyed. I'm like, well, why can't I represent Michael Ian Black? But then at some point, thank God, quickly, I said to myself, at the end of the day, my job is to make money, as long as it's legal. So, yeah, why can't I make a stand-up special for a non-client? So that's how it all started. We shot Michael Ian Black. And then word got out that we were making specials also for non-clients, and then it took off. And cut to, we've made close to 300 of them, and I have had one of I think the luckiest, most wonderful careers anyone could ever have. And you said it very succinctly and accurately yourself. I get to work with people that nobody knows who they are, and then 6 months later are selling, 4,000 or 5,000 tickets a night. And then I get to work with people like Kevin Hart, who everybody knew long before I met him, but I get to work with him as well, or Jim Gaffigan, or Alana Glazer. So it's the best of all worlds.
And when you're working with people like this, obviously there are egos involved. They've got certain stuff. Where do you kind of, as far as the producing and what you do with their comedy specials, is there any guidance on your part? Do you kind of just there to facilitate the project itself? What kind of line do you walk as far as not wanting to get into their creative space, but also keeping it to where it's going to be a marketable project that will do well?
Basically what I do is I decide what artists I think we should be in business with, and then I try to get in business with them. Once that is successful, I don't feel like it's, and I get this from my management training when I was a manager, it's not my job really to give notes. The artist, he or she is the person on stage. They're the ones with the most to lose and the most to gain, and also they're the ones working on their own material, 5 to 20 nights a week, and, what do I know? That's the way I always look at it. It's like, if there's an artist making a joke, I don't know, just to pull something random out of my butt, if there's an artist out there making jokes about apples and oranges, that artist is standing in front of crowds, like I said, 5 to 20 times a week, and they hear the public react to the joke about apples and oranges. Who am I to sit there in an editing bay and say, oh, I think that's funny, or oh, that's not funny? Like, who am I to say that? The artist is the one who has the experience and the data to make those decisions. And I really, unless the artist really wants me to weigh in, which I'm happy to do, I really pride myself on not giving notes and not, telling artists what to do. I was at a premiere party Friday night for the special we just put out on Amazon called I'm Mom So Hard, which is this podcast with these two great comedian bloggers, podcasters, actresses, writers, everything, Jennifer and Kristen. And, the party was at their house, and afterwards, they got up to thank everybody for coming, and, they brought me up, to say thank you to me and all that stuff. And one of the things they said, which I was very proud of, was they said, Brian told us at the beginning he wouldn't tell us what to do, and he lived up to that. We said we wanted to say these jokes. He said, great. We said we wanted to shoot at this venue. He said, great. And that's exactly what I did. And on the technical side, I definitely have opinions, and because I direct a lot of these now, and, but again, even when it comes to the directing, I'm very aware of the fact that if I'm directing a horror movie or a drama, the directing really has to be special to keep the audience entertained and into it and whatever. But for a stand-up special, it's a little bit different. You don't want to distract the audience with your directing. And, I think there are certain shots that look great. They've always looked great, from Eddie Murphy's Raw to a special we shot last night in Philly. And again, you want to make the artist look as great as he or she can look, and you don't want to have the audience sitting at home like, why is that jib moving around at 100 miles an hour? That takes away from the material. So I really have a kind of a live and let live style once we're lucky enough to get in business with an artist. We trust the artist, and that's it. And we move forward, and 99 out of 100 times that works in our favor. Every now and then it doesn't work, but it's about a 1% failure rate and a 99% success rate.
And with the comedy specials you're producing, we've talked a little bit about the toys that made us. You mentioned the movies that made us. You've got your show Discontinued, which is now on Amazon. There must be, I would assume, with so many projects, you must feel like you've got all these balls you're juggling up in the air. What do you have? Other ones that you kind of want to throw in, like a chainsaw or a torch that you're also juggling as you're going? Or at what point do you feel like this will be enough for now, and then once these are done, we'll move on to this project? Or are you welcome new projects all the time? And we're going to find out how busy he is right after this, so stand by.
Hi, this is John Delancey, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
And we are back. This segment and this show, really, the whole show, brought to you by DiscoverSt.Charles.com. That's the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau, who handle all things tourism. They schedule all the things. It's like they're the constant party planners all year long for this incredible jewel of a place that we have located right here in our backyard. If you've not been to historic Main Street in St. Charles, you're missing out. Absolutely wonderful place. It's very picturesque and atmospheric all by itself, but when you have a festival going on like Heritage Days or the Scottish Parade that comes through, they just had a Pride Parade went through there. They've got Legends and Lanterns right now going, getting ready to gear up for Halloween. They've got the Christmas traditions with all the international Santas, chestnuts being roasted on an open fire. It's a great time no matter what time of year, no matter what the event. The city of St. Charles is always a fantastic destination spot. And I mentioned Christmas traditions. We literally get people, I'm not even exaggerating, from all over the globe come to St. Charles for this event. It's fantastic. And as I said, there's not a bad time to go. If you're a foodie, plenty of restaurants to eat at up and down the main street in St. Charles and also in the streets of St. Charles, just on the other side of Highway 70. A lot of newer, hip restaurants right there. But if you like blackberry cobbler, you want to hit Magpies on South Main Street. They've got the new Salt and Smoke Barbecue right there on the intersection of the 400 and 500 blocks of Main Street. And if you're a shopper, if you are looking for a special gift for someone, there is guaranteed to be a shop on Main Street that has what you're looking for. Check out the website, DiscoverStCharles.com, to get more information. If you're from out of town, you can plan your trip. Get it all right there. Discover St. Charles. That's DiscoverStCharles.com. Before we went to break, we were talking with Brian Volk-Weiss, and we'd asked him just how busy he gets and where he draws the line before he'll take on a new project.
Well, it's so funny. If the business worked in an ideal way, which it couldn't, but let's say it could, yes, I would be able to say, you know what? We're good at running 3 shows at a time. Let's always have 3 shows at a time. But it doesn't work like that. So, unfortunately, sometimes we got 1 show going, sometimes we got 6 shows going. You never know. It's not feast or famine because we never have famines, and we do have feasts fairly often. But you just got. Here's the thing that I do. I am very blessed at this point that I have a network of very, very talented showrunners, and I'm very lucky in that I can count on people that I've worked with before. We're doing a show now that I can't talk about yet, but the showrunner of that series, she and I have basically worked together almost nonstop for 4 years. So, on different shows. So that's the thing, that at the beginning of my career, I didn't have that network, but I also wasn't able to be doing 3 or 4 shows or 5 shows at a time because I didn't have that volume in my business. So luckily, now that I do have a team of people I trust who I know are crazy talented.
And we mentioned the Forbes article. You just had a really great write-up in LA Times not that long ago. When you came out of the University of Iowa, did you ever think that there'd be a point in your career where you're almost now like a mogul? You've got all these specials, you've got teams of people working for you. Was this where you pictured yourself, or did you kind of think it might be a different path fresh out of college when you moved to LA?
To be completely honest with you, the outcome, and just for the record, I do not view myself as a mogul yet. So you're very nice to say that, but I do not feel that way about myself. But to answer your question directly, yes, what I'm doing now and what I hope to be doing in 10 years, building upon what I'm doing now, this was always the goal. The thing that was unexpected was that it was done via stand-up comedy, at least initially. Mm-hmm. So that was the curveball, in a good way. That was the curveball that I did not predict. But yes, I always wanted. I'm a big student of history, and especially Hollywood history. So I know how Warner Brothers was built. When I was in like the 7th or 8th grade, I knew what Walt Disney did to do what he did, and so I always knew how they did it, and I always thought it was possible to be done again, and that's what I've been trying to do. I definitely walked that path for close to 20 years.
And it's fascinating to hear you say that, because it sounds like you're approaching it with such an analytical mindset, but you strike me as such a creative type. Are you just very much a left brain and a right brain person who's able to merge those worlds then?
Well, it's so funny. It's so funny. If you were to interview different people that I work with, they would give you different answers. So, like, if you interviewed our head of production, he would say, Brian is the least analytical person I ever met. He's all creative. If you were to talk to my wife, she would say, no, she would agree with my head of production, actually. Here's the thing. Here's what I feel about myself. Like, I feel very blessed that I have what I call an Indiana Jones job. And what I mean by that is, like, Indiana Jones had it perfect. He could be in the field dodging arrows and jumping over chasms, but he could also be, at the school or the museum teaching. So I'm very lucky in that I have an office and a day job and, meetings and charts and graphs and whatever. But I also am very lucky that I can go out into the field whenever I want or as much as I need to, and produce. I don't think very many people are able to do both things simultaneously. Like I said, it's a real blessing.
And we mentioned the Mad About You's coming back, which is a fantastic show. If with your production, with all this stuff, it's got to be obviously kind of mulling in the back of your brain. There are other shows you'd like to see brought back that you'd like to oversee. If there was a show out there, 80s, 90s, that you would like to helm and bring back, you could have the original cast if you wanted to, or reboot it from scratch. Do you have like 2 or 3 that are on the back of your brain that you'd love to do? And we're going to find out just which projects Brian would bring back from the 80s and 90s if he had his druthers. We'll get that answer to the question right after this. Stand by.
Real American, fight for what's right, fight for your life.
Attention maggots, this is Sergeant Slaughter from WWE and G.I. Joe, the real American hero, and you're listening to Geek to Me. Don't touch that dial, and that's an order.
We are back Want to make sure we tell you about our other sponsor, Marcus Theaters. MarcusTheaters.com is the website. And for my money, there is not a better place to see a movie than in a Marcus Theaters. They've renovated the movie theaters here in St. Louis. They've the Ronnie's location, the DePere location, the Chesterfield. Now they're renovating Arnold. They've done a great job. These theaters are fantastic. And I don't want to name names of competitors, but it really is a night and day difference. I was, for some reason, given a gift card to a competitor by a relative who I guess doesn't hear my show and doesn't realize that Marcus is one of my sponsors. So we had to use the gift card. So went to this other theater, and I will tell you, night and day difference. My wife and I just both looked at each other and we're like, nah, we're going to go see a movie at Marcus Theaters next time for sure, gift card or not, because it really is that big of a difference. Marcus Theaters is a first-class movie-going experience, from the concessions to the staff to the cleanliness to the quality of the digital projection for the movies. They have IMAX, 3D showings. If you're going to see a movie, do it in the best possible surroundings. MarcusTheaters.com, MarcusTheaters.com, the website. You can buy your tickets, find the location closest to you, all that right from the website. Marcus Theaters is a great place to see a great movie. Before we went to break, we were talking with Brian Volk-Weiss, the creator of The Toys That Made Us, and he's been doing a lot of these projects. We asked him, since he's a film and TV buff, if he was going to bring back a series from the 80s or 90s other than Mad About You. What series would that be?
First of all, I got to give you some credit, man. No one has ever asked me that before. That's a great question.
Thank you.
A show I would love to bring back, oh my God, is Sledgehammer. Do you remember Sledgehammer?
Of course.
I loved that show. So that's the first one. The second show that I'd love to bring, I love this question, man. What a great question. My second favorite show that I'd want to bring back is Ultraman. Do you remember Ultraman?
I do. I'm not as familiar with it, but I do know the show, yes.
Ultraman was great. It was kind of like Tron meets RoboCop, I guess. He kind of looked like Tron, but he was kind of like RoboCop. So the whole thing was great, and it was way ahead of its time on many levels. But do you remember his catchphrase? He had the greatest catchphrase. By the way, Sledgehammer had a great catchphrase, too. Do you remember either of those?
The only thing that sticks out when you say Sledgehammer, I remember the time when he was bonding with his partner, Duro, and he said, you know what? I'd really like to fight you sometime, Duro. And she didn't know how to react to that. I just remember that vividly, the whole scene. I can't remember his catchphrase now that I'm put on the spot, though.
I don't remember that, but that's funny. But no, so Sledgehammer's catchphrase was, trust me, I know what I'm doing.
That's right.
And then he would screw everything up that he was planning on doing. But Ultraman had this great tagline that I always thought was genius, because part of what I loved about the character was he was a raging egomaniac. And, like, first of all, you rarely see a character like that, but he was the lead character, and he was just this lunatic egomaniac. And he used to have this great line where he used to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, you can consider me an 11. And I always thought that was so funny. And he had that awesome car that could, like, digitally pixelate in and pixelate out. So that's two shows that I really loved growing up. There you go. You said 2 or 3. I gave you 2.
That's perfect. And I've got a couple people who weighed in on Twitter when they found out I was going to talk to you. I've just got 2 quick questions from them. At the Geek of Steel asked, in your opinion, because we know you're an avid toy collector, you made the toys that made us, you're the creator of those, directed a lot of them. What is the worst toy ever, in your opinion?
Here's the problem. What does worst mean? Does worst mean, like, you brought it home? Like, okay, I'll give you 2 answers, if that's okay.
Sure.
So here's what I think is the worst toy ever. There was a toy that basically, I think was in the 60s or 70s. I'm not sure what it was called, but it was like you would make your own little plastic, like, tchotchkes. Like, you would make your own, like, plastic frog, or you would make your own, like, plastic necklace. And you had to see this thing. Like, if you saw this now, I mean, I don't mean to be dark, but, like, I guarantee you any kid that, like, this was their favorite toy and they played with it every day, like, I guarantee you they got cancer. Like, I don't know if they died of it, but they got cancer. This thing, it would come with these vials of goo, and you would put the vials of goo into this, like, quote-unquote oven that was literally a 200-watt light bulb. And the light bulb would, like, melt the goo, and then you would, like, push the goo into molds. And literally you're sitting there in your kitchen or your dining room or whatever using this thing, and by design, not by accident or anything, by design, this thing is blasting out gray, greasy smoke. And I remember a friend of mine had this. His sister had it. And I remember, you know, even being like a little kid, I just remember being like, this can't be healthy. Like, this can't be good. Like, your ceiling is black. Like, who? Like, I guarantee you that toy would never, like, that toy was probably not legal by 1980, let alone 1990, 2000. So I think that's the worst toy ever made. Like, I still vividly, I saw it in a museum a couple of years ago in Denver. It was like a big toy museum exhibit. And I just saw it, and I hadn't thought about it in years. And I'm like, this was crazy. So that's, I think, the worst toy to, like, have in your home or whatever. Like, that shouldn't have been made. But the worst toy as it relates to, my God, what the F were you thinking? Who greenlit this? And, like, this would actually be the last episode. If I'm lucky enough where we get to make more seasons of Toys That Made Us, and Netflix says, just so you know, season 6, that's the last season. The last episode would be an episode called The Toys That Should Have Not Been Made. And the centerpiece of that episode would be LJN's Dune line, because that line, I'm obsessed with that line, by the way. Like, I have an entire shelf in my collection dedicated to Dune consumer products. I have Dune party hats. I have Dune sheets and pillowcases. I mean, it was a movie that should have not had toys, let alone party hats. There was like connect the dots for like that nasty creature floating in the tank. Like, right. They made an action figure of Duke Harkonnen. Like that guy's the most. My wife can't even look at a picture of that guy. That was a toy. So those are, in my opinion, for very different reasons. One, because it gave you cancer. The other, because it bankrupted a toy company. It derailed David Lynch's career for 10 years. Those are the two worst toys, I think, but for very different reasons.
Very well. Yeah, I can. The cancer thing, you should have seen my face. I was wincing as you were describing this device. It sounds just awful.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called, but it was horrible.
And at Movie King 37 was wondering, when you did the Transformers episode, he noticed a lack of Beast Wars. Was it just a time constraint thing? Was there so much Gen 1 stuff to cover? Or is that something we might look forward to in a future episode down the road?
It was 1,000% a time constraint. We absolutely cut that, edited that. I mean, everything. We did a very deep dive into it, and we had to cut it for time. The good news is we have a massive Blu-ray set coming out between now and the end of the year, and I am always so nervous to say stuff like this, because whenever I'm wrong, I hear about it a lot forever. So just please hear me that I am saying I think one of the extras is the Beast Wars, not Beastmaster. That would be very random. The Beast Wars scene that we cut out.
Fantastic. So that'd be something to look forward to for sure if you're planning to buy the Blu-ray when it comes out. Hopefully that'll be on there. That's very exciting, because I know a lot of people have said before, when I've mentioned this documentary series, they said, oh, I don't have Netflix. I was like, this is worth getting Netflix just so you can watch The Toys That Made Us. It's ridiculous.
Yes. To put it mildly, it's a massive set. I mean, we threw in everything but the kitchen sink.
And one last question. I know I've already taken up a lot of your time with all the stuff you're doing, with all the work. When you're wanting to switch your brain off and you want to kind of relax and decompress, what do you watch then? What kind of shows do you like? What do you like to put on, or are you more of a reader? What do you kind of do to just take your mind off work? And we're going to wrap up the conversation with Brian Volk-Weiss, finding out what he does to relax when he's not working on all these projects. Right after this, stand by.
Hi, this is Alan Oppenheimer, the voice of Skeletor, and you're listening to Geek to Me.
And we're back. We've been joined this hour by Brian Volk-Weiss, creator of The Toys That Made Us, many comedy specials that we talked about, working on Mad About You, the comeback. We talked about with all these projects he's working on, what he does to relax.
Well, my number one thing that I do to take my mind off work, which is the greatest thing in the world in general, but in particular taking your mind off work, is, I have an amazing wife and 3 kids, and, as cheesy as this sounds, and my God, I know it sounds cheesy, but every minute with them is memorable and wonderful. And, I can have the worst day or whatever, and I get home and, I'm just hanging out with my kids or my wife. And that is the greatest distraction. And not distraction, but that's the greatest thing in the world. It's like literally just walking out of one planet and then walking on to another. Like it's the best. TV shows and stuff. There's certain shows that, like, I love and I'm passionate about, and I'm like I am religious about The Expanse. It used to be on Sci-Fi Channel, now it's on Amazon.
Right.
Season 4 comes out, I think, in November or December. I love The Expanse. I'm religious about it. I've seen the whole thing twice. One of the greatest, it's probably the greatest science fiction show other than Star Trek, which, of course, is in its own category. I love The Boys. I just finished watching that. That's a great show. Also not relaxing, but a great show.
Right.
I love Miss Maisel. That's a fantastic show. But I'm also like a big Star Trek guy. So for like enjoying and just relaxing, like seasons 3 through 7 of Next Generation, those are very relaxing for me. I watch them all the time. And all the movies, in particular the Kirk and Spock movies, 1, I don't watch 5, but I do watch 1 through 4 and 6 pretty frequently. And then I watch Generations and First Contact quite a bit as well. So, yeah, and then I do read. I don't read as much as I used to before I had kids, but I do. I try to read. I know this sounds horrible. Anyone who doesn't have kids will think this is ridiculous. But if you do have kids, this won't sound as ridiculous. But I try to read at least 1 page a week. And that may sound ridiculous. And usually it's not just 1 page. Usually because I have the rule, I'll pick up the book and end up reading a chapter. But yeah, I used to read a lot more, but not as much as I used to. James, thank you so much. I do have to jump. I apologize,
Nope.
But I really appreciate your time, your interest, and all your questions. Really good stuff. This was a lot of fun.
That's going to wrap it up. My thanks once again to Brian Volk-Weiss for being on air for the whole hour with us. Great conversation. Check out The Toys That Made Us Season 3 in November. Until next week, my friends.
It's not in the way you watch I zombie. It's not in the way you watch The Flash. It's not in the way you love Scotty Young art. It's not in the way you play Mario Kart. It's not in the way you look when you make Game of Thrones references. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio. That's our show. This is Geek to Me Radio.
Thank you, Netflix. Good night.